The next thing we'll be doing is we'll set up our global colors, typography, and standard elements that we want to be using throughout our website. You can do this by going into Appearance, Customize. Inside the customizer, you can set global options. This is where you'll be able to define things like the overall typography styles, colors, how your buttons look, the different containers, and how they interact on your page. So let's jump in and take a look. I'll start off with typography. This particular theme, and again, I'm using the Astra theme right now, has different typography settings, which you can easily alter by simply clicking these buttons. And you can see I'll get a live preview about what these sorts of changes are going to do when I click them. You can easily undo by clicking this undo button right here. And if you ever decide that you just don't want to accept any of these changes, you're just going to click the X, which is going to warn you that if you navigate away from this, you'll lose the changes. I'm going to click OK. And now if I go back into the customizer, you will see that the settings that I have are back to whatever they started with. It is also worth noting that when you hover over any of these settings, it will tell you the font families that it's going to be using. For this particular site, I want to use Lato, but I don't want to use the Laura body font. So I'm going to totally customize these settings by going down here to the body font. I can click this little pencil icon, and here is where I can choose a different font family. This is going to contain a list of all sorts of fonts, including a bunch of Google fonts. You might have recalled that I did install a plugin so that I could have access to additional fonts. We probably won't be using that right now because this particular theme does give me access to a plethora of fonts. If you know what the font is that you want to use, you can simply type it in. So I want to use this Lato or Lato font, and you can see as soon as I choose that for my body font, everything is going to update here. You can also choose different font weights. So if I choose a lightweight, it's a little bit thinner. And if I choose something bold, it's going to go bold. I will stick with normal for the base font. You can also adjust your base font size, and you have different units of measurement here. This allows you to set your line spacing, and then you can choose the type of case. So the only thing I want to do is really set my font family. For my headings, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, once again, use the same font that I had specified previously, but I will change to a bold for my fonts, and it looks like bold is already being specified for this. I'm not going to set any more options for my heading font family. In order to specify the font sizing, you're going to click on the pencil icon here, and if it says inherit, it's just inheriting whatever we have specified here. So I don't have to set this to a specific font if it's already been specified up here. For my H1s, I'm going to be using a font size of 45, so I will change the value to 45. Then I'm going to go to my H2s. For these, I'm going to be using a font size of 35. And for my H3s, I'll be using a font size of 25. H4 is already set to 20. I will leave that as is, and I'm not going to worry about setting any of the settings for these other two heading sizes because I don't really use H5s and H6s. Don't forget, as soon as you've made these changes, if you're happy with them, you'll want to click Publish to accept those changes. I'm going to click the back button, and now we'll go into the color area. This particular theme has several different styles. So currently it's displaying style 1. If I click style 2, you can see how the background color changes to be a lighter blue, and some of these other colors change as well. Here's style 3, which is more of a purple shade. I'm going to go to style 1, but we're going to fully customize this. We can easily customize this by altering the color palette that it currently exists and we can specify where we want to use these different colors. So I'm going to go in and set my own color palette. I'll start off with color 1, and I know the hex values that I want to use. So I am just going to type in the various equivalent hex values, and then I'll click on the next circle and type the next hex value. You can see as I change some of these colors, the preview is changing, and some of these things are not things that I would want. I'm just going to simply plug in the color palette that I want, and then I'll go and I'll alter how these colors are going to affect the various elements on my page. It also is worth noting that you can always override these colors. So even though you're plugging these in, you're not necessarily stuck with them. You can always make changes to them later on an individual basis. Now that I've established the colors that I want to use, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to assign these colors to different things. So I know right away that I want my body text to be using this darker gray color. So I will specify that. I know for my headings, I want to use this dark teal color by default. So I'll go ahead and assign that. For borders, I'm going to just make this a light gray, although I potentially could change this on an individual basis. For my site background, I'm going to set this to white. And then for content background, I'm going to set this to this lighter gray color. And actually, let's change our borders to white. Then I'm going to come up to my links and I'm going to set my default link color. I want my default link color to be teal, and my hover link color is going to be this red. So if I have any sort of links, they should go ahead and update with these changes. The accent color, and sometimes if it's not clear what this is for, you'll just have to plug it in and see where it appears in your theme. So you can see that it's kind of creating this selected page that we're on. I'll go ahead and just leave that out white because I don't really need that to change. And then I may have to come in here and modify some of these things as we go on, but my base layout for my page has been specified. I'll go ahead and click Publish to accept those changes. I'm going to click the back button and we'll move on to Container. Right now, the container layout is normal. Narrow is going to make the page a little bit more narrow, and full width is going to change it to full width. I will keep this at normal. Here's our container style, and if you hover over, it tells you that this is going to apply only when the layout is set to normal or narrow. So if we unbox things, you can see that the boxes that encompass our posts somewhat disappear. I like the boxed look a little bit better. You can alter the container width and you can plug in whatever values you want. It is worth mentioning that if you do change these settings and then you want to go back, you can just click the little undo button to return back to what you had. Because Astra also has a pro version of their theme, it's going to let you know that if you want to control these other things, you would need to update to the pro version. We are just going to stick with the free version. So once again, I'm going to click Publish. I'll click this back button right here, and I'm going to go into Buttons. This is where we can style our buttons. I don't necessarily have any buttons on this page, but I'm going to set up my button presets. So here is my first button. You can see when I click these, I get different colors. So for the most part, they're gray, and when we click, they turn blue. I'm going to set my text color to be white. I'm going to set my hover text color to be this lime green. The background color for my buttons is going to be this darker green shade that we have as part of our color palette. And for the background color, I'm not going to change the background color, so we'll just assign this to be darker green as well. The border color, I'm going to put at white, and that's just going to remain the same, so I'll plug those in. For the font, again, I just want to use my Lato font. This should inherit from before, but I'm going to plug in the values that I want to use. Everything else is fine. I'll leave that as is. If you want to adjust the padding, you can do so. You have the option of linking these so they all stay the same, or if they're unlinked, you can modify them individually. You can also modify the border radius. I want my buttons to be somewhat rounded, so I'm going to plug in a border radius so that they have more of a rounding. It would be a little bit nice to be able to see a button on my page, but since I don't have one here, I'm just going to have to guess at what I'd like, and then if I need to make modifications later, I certainly can. I'll click Publish to accept these changes, and then we'll hit the back button to go back to the next category. The next option that we have is scroll to top, and this is going to add this little button right here that just allows the user to click that so they don't have to manually scroll. It just takes them to the top. You can choose whether you want that on and how you want it displayed and what size you want it to be. I'm just going to leave these at the default settings, so I won't make any changes there. Under accessibility, you can go ahead and either turn this on or off. I recommend you leave this on as it will help people with any sort of disability to more easily navigate and interact with your website. Again, I'm going to leave these at the defaults for now. I'll click the back button. We have modifications we can make to the block editor. This is a way that WordPress will handle groups, columns, and covers. I am going to simply leave this at the middle setting, the comfort setting. I feel like this works the best, but feel free to modify the size of those things. You can modify how your core block spacing is going to be treated, but I find that the comfort or the default is fine. And then there's some miscellaneous settings. This is basically only the smooth scroll, which will allow you to easily, when you click these sort of buttons, scroll in a smooth manner. So those things are fine. The final thing I want to show you is you have this little pencil icon right here. And if you click this, this is going to open your style guide. And the style guide is really nice because it will actually show you what these things look like. So you can see here's my primary button. I don't have anything for a secondary button. So if I wanted to make that, I could click on that. It would open up my button category. And I initially just set my primary button. I didn't do anything for the secondary. So now I can make specifications for the secondary button. So I'll just quickly do that now. I am going to set my text color, my background color, and for this I'm going to have it be more of a golden color. When the user hovers over, we'll switch it to the lime green, and then the border color is just going to be white. And for my font, I'm just going to make sure that this is using the same settings as my other button. And I used a font weight of 400. And then my padding, I'm going to leave at the defaults. The border width is going to be changed to 1. And my border radius, I am using 12. And I want that to be all the way around. So I'll click this little link button. And now if I plug this in, it will update throughout. I'll click publish. Here are the different colors that I'm using throughout, and this actually has a better description of what these things are. Even though it's specifying that the headings should be this light gray, you may recall that we set up all of our H elements to be the teal, so that is going to override this setting. Feel free to change these things if you feel like it is something that is going to affect your page, but usually I go through and customize these. I just like to plug in all my colors so I have my own color palette and I can easily access these. I kind of ignore what these are typically set up to be because I might want to change those things anyways. This is nice though, as the style guide will show you what your body copy is going to look like, what your headings are going to look like. It's going to show you all of the various sizing and specifications. And if you want to edit any of these things, you can simply just click the little pencil icon and then you can access those things, change those things if you need to. I will go ahead and hit publish to accept those changes. At this point, I am done modifying my global settings. If we go back to the front end of our website and refresh, you can see that my website has updated slightly. Some of these things I don't love, but I'm going to modify them individually. I just like to go through and make sure that I'm using consistent font families, sizing, colors, and whatnot. I hope that you found this helpful, and it's a great introduction to the customizer.